Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Charmaine Mosley, and I serve as the coordinator of the Social Action Committee alongside Soror Sherry Evans, Soror Tony Sledge, as well as Soror Q Atkins, on behalf of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Mu Sigma Zeta Chapter. Welcome to this important conversation on human and sex trafficking and how we can work together to prevent it. We're honored to be joined by an esteemed panel of experts who bring deep knowledge and experience to this critical issue. Today, we will cover key topics like myths versus facts, warning signs, how to protect ourselves and others, and what to do if we suspect trafficking. This discussion is especially timely following a recent statewide effort that led to hundreds of arrests, as well as the freeing of many, many victims, reminding us that awareness and action does matter. Although this is a discussion, we will take a few questions from attendees through the chat later on in the program. We will do our best not to repeat questions already asked of our guest panelists. Please remain respectful. Any profane or inappropriate language in the chat may result in removal from the webinar. We also ask that attendees keep their microphones muted and cameras turned off. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, as I just mentioned, and will be available at a later date. Our goal is to leave you informed, aware, and empowered to help make a difference in our community. Thank you all for being here. Let's begin. Soror Evans, hold on, let me share my screen.
Okay.
Soror Evans?
Yes, I am Sherry Evans. I am a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and I am the vice president of the chapter of Mu Sigma Zeta. It is an honor to be a part of our social action committee. But before we begin, we would love to acknowledge our 5 founders. They're the reason that we're here serving our community today. We also want to acknowledge our president, Dr. Danielle Cohen, President Zeta Zeta Chapter, Sabrina Bell, our president of Lambda Iota Sigma, C. Shelton, the president of Omicron Iota Sigma Chapter, Pete Bain. And we also want to acknowledge our president of the National Panhellenic Council, President Donna Dudley, and all the Phi Beta Sigma fraternity and Zeta Phi Beta sorority members. We also would like to acknowledge our brother, Ben Kelso, commander of SDPD, and all the panelists. Thank you.
Okay. Hold on one second. I want to go ahead and share this this news video from an operation that happened last month, in February of 2026, earlier this year. But I'm trying to bring it up on my screen here. Hold on one second. Okay, let me share my screen.
LA County Sheriff Robert Luna says the week-long statewide crackdown on human trafficking has resulted in young victims being rescued off the streets and hundreds of arrests. NBC4's Lauren Coronado is live in downtown LA with the main takeaways. Lauren. Annabelle, good morning. The news
technical difficulties. Hold on one second. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Robert Luna says the week-long statewide crackdown on human trafficking has resulted in young victims being rescued off the streets and hundreds of arrests. NBC4's Lauren Coronado is live in downtown LA with the main takeaways. Lauren.
Annabelle, good morning. The news conference just wrapped up, and yes, this was a statewide week-long operation, and I have LA County Sheriff Luna with us right now. Thank you for being with us. A lot of information was shared. Talk with me about the key takeaways. Let's start with the arrests.
Yeah, good morning. What I talked about today were state arrest and local arrest. Our local arrest, 12 adults rescued, 5 children that were rescued, 18 suspected traffickers arrested, 79 sex buyers, people who are actually buying sex from these kids, which is actually heartbreaking, and 12 other non-human sex trafficking offenses that occurred. Statewide, obviously, there's a lot more numbers because this is a statewide effort. 155 adults rescued, 74 children rescued, 71 suspected sex traffickers arrested, 328 sex buyers arrested. And again, just for your audience knows, people who are buying sex, these are young victims, 13, 14, and 15-year-old little girls, little boys. It is absolutely sickening. That's why you saw this press conference today. I was standing next to a large team from LAPD, the LA County District Attorney's Office, Homeland Security, LA County Probation. I could go on and on. This is law enforcement agencies all up and down the state, but just as important, the community-based organizations that we're working with. They are true partners because the minute we rescue a child, we want to turn her over to somebody who really can just give them that love and wraparound services till we get them off the streets and either back to their homes. And something that was discussed is a lot of these victims are young children who run away from home, and they're from all over the country. And some of the pimps that we're dealing with are from around the country, but they verge here in the Los Angeles area. And I want everyone to be aware of it, because if you see it, report it to us.
A multi-agency operation, and I understand that this is annual too. I want to show some of the evidence that you guys shared with us. Can you talk with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is from one search warrant that our detectives did in culmination with the human trafficking task force. As you can see, some of these individuals that we're dealing with are very dangerous individuals. No one should have something like this, that specifically people who have felony records. And I want to clarify something. Even though we're talking about this human trafficking a month or week, we do this every day. We do this 365 days a week. I mentioned that the Super Bowl's coming up next week.
Right.
Unfortunately, this type of activity does seem to go up around sporting events. And remember this, we're welcoming the world. This year, the World Cup is coming. We have the 2027 Super Bowl coming to SoFi, and we have the 2028 Olympics and Paralympics. These collaboration, these partnerships are going to keep going, and we want to make sure we send a strong message to people who are trafficking children. You're going to get caught. Don't do it. You're going to get caught, and there's going to be significant consequences. And then to the people buying the sex, don't do that. You are negatively impacting families. You're destroying people's lives. And then to the victims, we just want to say you matter. Come to us. Come to us in law enforcement, the community-based organizations. We want to help you. We want to get you out of that horrible situation that you're in.
Thank you, Sheriff. We really appreciate your time. Annabelle, we'll go ahead and send it back to you. And of course, we'll have much more information about this operation on our NBC LA app. Reporting live in downtown, I'm Lauren Coronado.
Okay. Soror Evans.
Yes, I would like to introduce our panelists for tonight. First, we have our moderator, who is Tonya McKenzie, and she's a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. She's the founder and chief controller of Control the Narrative and CEO of Sand and Shores, a public relations consultant specializing in strategic visibility, community engagement, brand credibility, and as the chair of Los Angeles County Commission of Alcohol and Other Drugs. She's the third commissioner. She has always championed issues impacting youth, and she is a published author. She also is a civic leader. And so we want to welcome her because she has empowered organizations and rising leaders to their own narrative and amplified their influence and led with impact. She's the first African American woman elected to the Rolando Beach Chamber of Commerce Board, named Woman of the Year, and serves in leadership roles across the public safety and policy and communication. And as the host of Leaders and Learners podcast, Tonya spotlights voices and shapes their culture. So we want to welcome her. Also we have next we have Miss DA Summer Stevens, and Miss Stevens is she handles the persecution, is one of the pieces of this, which she helps survivors often don't see themselves as victims. She teaches hold on just a minute. She's joining us from the DA's office, and she leads one of the nation's largest persecutors offices with nearly 30 years of experience and over 100 jury trials. She has handled complex cases, including human trafficking, sex assault, and homicide. She's a nationally recognized leader in combating human trafficking. She founded San Diego's specialized sex crimes and human trafficking division. She's launched prevention campaigns like The Ugly Truth and Know the Price. Her work emphasizes both credibility and victim support, earning her recognition as one of the 5 best persecutors in America. And so we want to welcome her. We want to welcome Dr. Marisa Ugarte, and she serves as the director of Bilateral Safety Corridor Coalition, the BSCC. She works to preserve the dignity and well-being of labor, sex exploited, and trafficked individuals through prevention, intervention, and education. Dr. Ugarte has received numerous awards, including a certificate of special congressional recognition and a victim advocacy award in San Diego. Her work began in 1997 while serving as a case manager for runaway teens, where she recognizes that many individuals involved in persecution and prostitution and actually victims of trafficking and exploitation. Since then, she has dedicated her efforts to raising awareness, supporting victims, and combating human trafficking. So we want to welcome her as well. We want to welcome Detective Krista Van Ordoso. She has been with San Diego's Police Department for 13 years. She's a detective with the SDPD's Human Trafficking Task Force, where she investigates the commercially exploitation of adults and juvenile victims. Prior to joining this task force, she was assigned to SDPD's Vice Operations Unit for 3 years, where she investigated crimes related to pimping, pondering, and prostitution. Both assignments, she has been involved in arrests in over 100 human trafficking, pimping, and prostitution related cases. So we want to welcome her as well. And that is it. We also want to welcome as well our president, Danielle Cohen, who is here on the panel as well, and our sister, Tony Sledge, who is also here.
Okay. Moderator McKenzie, you are muted.
Wonderful. We ready? Lovely. I want to start with Dr. Ugarte. Did I say that correctly?
Hello. Hi.
Did I say that right, Dr.
Yes, but remember, I gotta tell you something. I'm a doctor honoris causa, okay? It's not because I went to school. I just want to clarify that. Okay?
Okay, you want me to call you Marissa?
Yes, please.
Oh, lovely. Okay, Marissa. I need you to help me with this. And I'm gonna give you a little story really quick. My husband and I recently were in Monterey, California, and we saw signs that we had never seen before that said, beware of trafficking in a Hilton hotel. So we were shocked, and we had never seen anything like this in a Hilton hotel. It said, see something, say something. When people hear human trafficking, they picture strangers in dark vans. What does trafficking actually look like in our communities? And why do I feel like we are getting it wrong?
Well, it's an interesting question and a very good one. If you see somebody that is young, let's talk about a minor, in the street that looks around 10, 15, 12, there's something wrong right there. There are people and areas in every single town in California where this is happening, right? So, for example, we call it the blade of Main Street, National City, and San Diego PD. We know that there's things going on there. There are laws that are now are not allowing law enforcement to get close to them, but now there's another law, SB 379, which allows you to target the demand. Finally, we got something that we can do. So when you see a billboard like that, they're missing something. If you see something, report it. There has to be a number, and people need to know what could be the key elements of human trafficking: fraud or force or coercion. If you see somebody mistreating a girl, I've seen people being choked in the street. Call it. Call 911, make a difference. The thing is, we have a problem now, which is what we are addressing. So here are the girls in the street, but we also have the buyers. So now we can tell the buyers beware. The demand brings in human trafficking. No buyers, no trafficking. In every single place Summer has done, she'll tell you everything that she has worked on in San Diego. We are forming a team right now to address the demand. No buyers, no trafficking. Along with that, in everywhere you go, you saw the video of LA. There are two blades there. I know them by heart. One is Figueroa. That caters to the older girls. Now, what about Santa Monica Boulevard? They call it trolley stroller. Why? Because that's where they put the kids in. The community knows it, but nobody's reporting it. I wonder why. Are you afraid that you'll be targeted? You can do an anonymous call, whatever is necessary. So that is just there. What about San Jose? What about San Francisco? What about Sacramento? We have this problem all over California and all over the nation. So addressing it means that if you see a billboard, recognize, ask questions, call people, call your local law enforcement, ask for trainings, ask for, I suspect this, what do you think? They're going to be there for you. There's hotlines. There's the national hotline, 1-888-3737-8888. And then there's a local in San Diego, 619-666-2757. So what we are adamant to do is, you are doing it right now, is training and making the community aware of what is happening out there. And then we can report it either to Krista, that's the number one, or the task force, or it may be law enforcement, the direct law enforcement. I can call Vice Unit. I can try to do everything that I can to save someone, but you could too, just by letting people know.
Thank you for that. Detective Van Orsdel, do you want me to call you Krista or Detective?
Krista's fine.
Lovely. Krista, I want you to follow up with that and give us a little more. What does trafficking look like? What to the naked eye, for those that are unfamiliar but want to help, what should they be looking out for?
Yeah, I know most people, they have this misconception, they think the movie Taken, vans, kidnappers, guns and stuff like that. But a lot of times it's not like that. Most of the times it's actually not like that. Especially here locally. There's different signs. Say you have a school, female in school, she's got good grades, she's, doing good, got all her activities, and all of a sudden she's starting to kind of withdraw, and there's changes about her. That might be a sign, a small sign that something's going on in her life, and maybe she's not quite being trafficked yet, but maybe she's headed that way. Another thing too, like when you're at these hotels or the airport or anything like that, what you're going to look for is generally pimps or traffickers are male, not all the time, but most of the time. So generally the traffickers and pimps are male. So just to keep it easy, I'm going to refer to the traffickers as male. And generally our victims are female. It's not all the time, but the majority of the time. So, say you're in an airport, say you're in a hotel and you see, a male with a female with them, and there's just something that you're like, that's different. I mean, everybody knows what kind of normal is and what kind of, like, that hair on the back of your neck that stands up, you're like, that looks different. Like, she's covered in tattoos, she's kind of dressed kind of weird, he's got really flashy stuff on his body. They're not acting like a real couple, he's pretty mean to her. Why do they each have 2 cell phones? Just different little things like that you can look for, I would say are huge, because it goes undetected pretty easily.
I appreciate you sharing that. DA Stephan's prosecution is one piece of this, but survivors often don't see themselves as victims. They don't see themselves as victims. How do you build a case when the person you're trying to help does not know that they need help and they've been convinced they're not a victim? I think you're on mute.
I think this is why this is one of the most difficult types of cases to prosecute. A robbery on videotape, that's easy. But when you're trying to prosecute something where the victim doesn't recognize they're victims, then you have to really bring a very specialized team with a lot of trauma-informed lens to be able to understand and walk in the shoes of that victim. That is why I began our first dedicated sex crimes and human trafficking division, to bring that expertise and that lens and not blame the victim. After all, they've been blamed all their life for everything. They're the ones that deserve this. They're the ones who brought this on themselves. They're the ones that are promiscuous, that aren't dressing right. They're the ones that made the judgments. And this is why they stay in the shadows, because society condemns them from an early age. And as a society, we have to understand and respect their journey and how they got there. I call this phenomena psychological kidnap. So traffickers are no longer grabbing girls off the street and putting them in the back of a car, putting them in chains. That would be easy to prosecute. Every member of the community is going to call 911 if they saw something like this. They resort to the subtleties of psychological kidnap, where they are kidnapping the victim through interactions on social media. No one could be happier that Facebook and the others are finally facing some real judgment with the lawsuits, because they've allowed predators, traffickers to come into children's bedrooms so that parents can't even protect them, and talk with them and lure them and deceive them so that they join the trafficker and they don't even know what's happening. So it makes it very difficult. And what I teach on is that the prosecution is centered around the victim, but the victim is not the center of the prosecution. We're building a case based on digital evidence, forensic evidence, investigation, all of the different pieces, but we're not expecting the victim to actually tell the story. We care about the victim, but we are bringing the pieces of evidence around the victim. This is why I think trainings like you're doing, I commend you. And I commend that there are also men on this call, because this can only be solved by a well-informed society that can detect, report, and have compassion for the victims rather than blame them.
I appreciate that. Krista, as it relates to accountability of law enforcement, in February 2026, so last month, there was a week-long operation, Reclaim and Rebuild. Was San Diego Human Task Force involved in the operation? And were any of the 600 arrests made involving law enforcement in San Diego?
What do you mean involving law enforcement? Sorry.
Was it in San Diego? Was that task force involved in the arrest?
Yes, I'm sorry. So we did not do Reclaim and Rebuild because prior to that, we did our own operation in the end of January. As soon as that bill passed that Marisa was talking about, we did our own operation, and we did 115 arrests. We did a buyer-centered operation, so we were targeting the demand. Because like Marisa said, without the demand, there's no trafficking in San Diego. So because of that huge operation, we were not part of a Reclaim and Rebuild this year.
Okay. Can you follow that up with letting us know how many trafficking cases go unreported? Because communities some of them don't really trust law enforcement enough to call. And what is the fix there for those that don't trust or that have fear issues? Help me out with that.
So there's not an exact number on the cases that go unreported. I'm sure it's astronomical for various reasons, including the lack of trust in law enforcement. All we can do right now is we try to train as much as possible. Not only for ourselves, we're constantly attending training ourselves, which includes trauma-based training so that we're more trauma-informed. But we go to schools, we go to churches, gyms, we go to the jails in case so the deputies or detentions guys, they can recognize the signs of what's going on in there. But pretty much what we try to do is anytime we encounter a victim is make sure they know that they're a victim. They're going to be treated like a human. There's nothing, aside from if they're wanted for something crazy, they're not criminally in trouble. And even if they're not ready to report to law enforcement and they don't want to talk to us, there's still a ton of resources like Marisa, she's one of them. So they can kind of bypass us until they're ready, and they can go straight to getting the help that they need without actually talking to us. Another thing we do as well is we try to keep them as much as away from, like if it goes forward, the case goes forward and it goes to trial and everything like that, because a lot of their fear is, well, if I get my trafficker in trouble, I'm going to have to go through this whole court process, be drugged through it, be re-victimized. So we try to build a lot of our cases without the victim being drugged through that. Like DA Stephan said, with digital forensics, all the social media stuff, phones, text messages, as much as we can to do to keep them away from it and uninvolved. So helping them without them having to be a part of it.
I appreciate that. Marisa, social media is a recruiting tool. How are traffickers using platforms our kids are on today to groom and target young people?
Okay, we've been working with a group called Nicose National Center of Exploitation. And we found that there's the dirty dozen, and now they're even addressing more on the dirty dozen. As Summer mentioned, part of the dirty dozen is Facebook, Instagram, WeChat. There's a lot of them. So basically, what is the problem? It's the lack of knowledge of parents. So you have a child with a laptop or a phone in their room where you should have the laptop in a place that you see visible, okay? Because of the recruitment is there, it's I love you. Your parents don't pay attention to you. And the number one thing on a human trafficking case with the victims, they don't recognize their victims because they say, but I love him. That's why Summer and Krista are trying to build it around the victim because love is the number one coercion, and it begins in the internet by grooming them and romancing them. So imagine a little kid, 12, 13, 14, finding somebody that, oh, he really loves me. He's going to protect me. He's going to be there for me. And parents are not aware of this. Again, if we do the right work, we need to address one, parents. We need to address the schools when they let us on the reality of things. We need to community groups like you and help us doing it and replicate what we're doing because we cannot do it alone. It takes a village to do it. So basically, that's how they do it. WeChat, Instagram. Oh my goodness, you have to see what's in there. On YouTube, and they get addicted to it. So Sommer said it right. 375 million is like taking a hair out of a bear. Nothing for this guy. But the point being is, it's something. It's something, but it's not enough. We need to be able to pass the laws that prevent this from happening in all the platforms. And it's a difficult thing, and it takes a village to do that, and people who are willing to go to the lawmakers and to the federal ones, to the state ones, and say, we need to change this. But remember, the victims don't come forward because love is the coercion. But I love him. We have people that had to testify, and yet they were saying, but I don't want to testify because I love him. I don't want him to go to jail. He's been there for me. Elaine, why is it this? It's because they're lonely, because they want to be protected, and because they don't feel that. So again, it also the community and parents and awareness that we can make everyone realize where is it that you need to be, one, for the minors, and how are the dangers in the internet? You have sextortion, which is another new way of doing things for kids. So my advocacy for this group is that you realize that we need you. I need you as an NGO. I think Krista and the task force needs you too, and so does Summer above all, because she is the pioneer on this, on helping us make a difference. So thank you.
DA Stephens, can you add some impact to that and talk about how your work has changed with the rise of social media and how much you're using it to prosecute these cases?
And social media has become so central that our office, which for perspective is the second largest in the state of California, the fifth largest in the nation, we serve 3.3 million people. So we have had the ability to form a whole cyber team of digital experts so that when evidence is recovered, we work with the police department and with all of their digital expertise to download these phones, to be able to break through passwords, to be able to look at the communication so that we can see the coercion that Marisa is describing. We can play for the jury the communications and how much goes into this kind of coercion. It starts with the love language that Marisa said, but then it turns into threats and a quota that has to be met, or else if that money is not brought by the young victim, there's going to be punishment. Many times If the victim has a child, the punishment is that they're gonna take away the kids. They're gonna report her to Child Protection Agency. If it's somebody who's undocumented, then the threat is that they're gonna be exposed and that federal authorities are gonna be called because of the documentation. If it's just a young American girl, then the threat is that her naked pictures are going to be exposed to her family and to her friends. And so all of these threats, these are the exploitation that happens. They follow a pattern, but we're able through digital evidence to show step by step how that happened. It actually has helped us in our prosecution because while digital evidence has expanded the reach of traffickers and predators, it has also allowed us to build stronger cases that don't depend on the testimony of a single victim.
I love that, that you share that. And selfishly, as an alcohol and other drugs commissioner, I would like to hear from you or Krista about how alcohol and drugs are also utilized to control some of these kids. And I want to bring that up because there are a lot of parents that are actually making it a little more accessible for their young person. You know, it's okay if they do it at home, if they get started, you know, at home, it's just a little bit, it's not addictive, but these traffickers are actually utilizing it to help control them, yeah?
I'm really glad you brought that up. I mean, we call it a chemical coercion. I mean, it's so easy, especially when you're talking about opioids or fentanyl. Even one time is gonna get that young person to start seeking it and wanting it. You know, marijuana, people really underplay that, but for young kids and with the THC now that is in the content, it's not the same as the old days where there's just a one-time experimentation. So that is definitely part of it. What we're finding is that for a lot of our victims, one of their needs is to get treatment because without the treatment, they're not able to be truly free of the exploitation.
Krista, you want to add on to that?
I'm sure. Just to expand a little bit, if you have a victim who's addicted to some kind of drug because of their, the trafficker started on them, they will use that as a form of manipulation. Because the trafficker controls the money, you're not going to get your fix if you don't go work for me. You're not going to get this if you don't go work for me. And then it creates such a problem that now we're finding too is that these girls, because they're so they need it, is that they're not going to work unless they're high. They're not going out to work unless they're drunk. And the weed too. The weed is a huge issue because it's changed a lot. I mean, it's more of a gateway drug than ever because it's already strong as it is, and then it's all of a sudden not strong enough. And we're seeing a rise too in whippets, like the CO2 cartridges. A lot of the juveniles, oh my gosh, they love their whippets. So and it's another thing that another form of control. The trafficker has the money, so in order to get their fix, they have to work for the trafficker to buy it for them or provide it for them.
And Krista, while I have you, I just want
Sure.
you to be as transparent as possible, talking to parents, teachers, community members. What could help them spot right away that most people might miss, completely overlook, that's going on with a child, that seems to be a problem, that should alert them that this isn't normal and authorities should be contacted?
I would just say right off the bat, any kind of behavioral or appearance changes. Like the example I gave earlier, you have a good student in sports and all of a sudden they're skipping school, withdrawing, they're sneaking around, they're on their phones a lot more. you know, a lot of parents think that this phone use is completely normal, but what are they doing? Who are they contacting? But I would say behavioral and appearance changes, and then the withdrawal from family, friends, and activities like that is the first thing. And then there's more stuff after that that should be a little bit more obvious, but those are the first
Okay,
things.
is there a smell?
A smell? I mean, yeah, maybe if they're starting to dabble into weed use or something like that, or, you know, maybe one of the things, whoever they're meeting up with, you know, they want to wear perfume or anything like that. But I would say weed use is the first thing that we see, and especially, or vape use is the first thing too we see, in especially the juveniles.
I appreciate that. And I bring that up again because we're trying to make it as obvious to those that may be unfamiliar with this stuff on what should trigger them to jump into action, to at least notify somebody, to let someone know, hey, let someone know that they might want to be paying attention to this child, this teenager, this young lady. And if you haven't seen it, you wouldn't know. You'd think, oh, she's just in a mood, or she's just going through what teenagers go through, right? Yeah. So DA Stevens, where does the system fail survivors after prosecution? Because getting a conviction is not the same as getting someone free.
That is so spot on. Liberty really truly comes from kind of regaining your dignity and your control over your finances. And that doesn't just happen with a prosecution. Our systems are definitely recognizing that, because we unfortunately see many victims that while we free them from one trafficker, they are gravitating and they become targets to future traffickers. So they're back in that cycle. Without economic independence, without the ability to deal with their mental health trauma, it doesn't work. So working with organizations like Marisa Ugarte's, with trauma care, with specific shelter, ability to work, being able to get your documents back, being able, like a victim we had the other day, she got her license to drive for the first time. That was a huge deal. That was like so small for us, but for her, this was a pathway to real freedom. The other big obstacle is many of our victims have their own criminal records because they've been convicted of prostitution or drugs that they've had to sell, things that they were forced by their trafficker to do. And so we also have implemented laws where we're able to free a victim, it's called vacature, vacate a victim's criminal record so that they can become nurses and teachers and really be free of that bondage of a criminal record. So there's been a transformation. I've been working on this issue with the partners you see here, Marisa and other fighters, for 20 plus years. And our laws have really transformed to actually give the promise of freedom beyond words to our victims. The other thing that I commend to any area around the United States is building a family justice center, a one safe place where a victim is surrounded by care and is not have to file a police report to get the help. What we find is victims sometimes have to get the help first before they're comfortable to report and to go through the criminal justice process.
Thank you. And while I have you, really quick, everyone that has a question, please enter it in the chat. I have a couple more questions for the panel, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. But Summer and all of the panelists, I'd like for you to help us understand this, because we've already talked about following the money, right? Who is actually buying? Who is the customer? Because we talk a lot about the victims and not nearly enough about the demand. So walk us through that.
Okay.
Go ahead, you go first, then I'll.
Yeah, we did a study with Swanee Hunt Foundation. I think you're very familiar with it, Summer, where we did it with Google, and we worked 3 years on the demand. And we found the following things. One, we had everyday buyers, occasional buyers and everything else. But the only thing that these men were afraid of buying was because of going to jail. That was the number one. Number two, they were afraid that their wife would find out. And three, you tried to say any other thing that, health issues, you name it, they didn't care. It was actually the fear of going to jail. So who were they? I'm lonely. I saw a beautiful girl in the street and I thought I could get her. So it's anonymous. You go and do it one time and then you leave. You have the regulars, like the girls call them, but the regulars then become very attached to the girls. So that's another problem. So again, anyone can be a buyer. What we're trying to do, and I hope, Summer, that you hear me on this, is to do a flyer that says, don't be a buyer, be a protector, be a hero. And what we're trying to do is get the buyers to understand the consequences of what they're doing, and then be a protector of the children and the women, and then be a hero by denouncing the crime. With that said, I wanted to, Summer, to let you know something. This is really important. We are discovering a new drug the kids are using, which is luring them to them. I know that you may be familiar, but I got to tell you, snuffing. Because it's illegal. It's illegal. It's legal, and you can't. If you get tested, you can't find out. We're starting to see cases with snuffing. So again, the use of the drugs that are being used are legal. They're buying them. You can buy them. Then kids lose all the protection in their minds of understanding what the dangers are. And I commend you for that, because yes, fentanyl is horrible and everything, but the new ones are even worse because they're legal. And my concern with this is that everybody understand that one is the buyer, that we're working on the demand, we're trying to do something, and these are the buyers. The only thing they're afraid of is getting caught. So how do we address that unless we can advertise all the laws that have passed that Summer can tell you about, and Krista, and what they're trying to do, and getting them sanctions. And okay, if you are buying a minor now, it's a felony. So that is a serious deterrent. So I don't know, but that's my part. But Summer, you can tell them more about that, because you work day and night on that part of the demand. So I leave it to her.
The buyers are anyone, but we have to stop making kind of excuses for them. Society makes it seem like a rite of passage that you can buy a human being for sex, but that is a form of slavery, buying a person, because no child, and the thing that upsets me the most is they make up this delusion that many of them are fathers themselves who would not want their daughters to be bought and sold like a slice of pizza, but they make up a delusion that this is consensual. But what little girl or boy ever grows up saying, I want to become a prostitute, I want to be sold to random strange men day and night? That's not true. That's false. And I think as a whole society, we need to stand up against it, and we need to make it socially unacceptable and morally clearly wrong, so that there's no longer jokes about it, movies about it, songs about it, because that really allows this rampant buying. I mean, the whole nation is focused on the Epstein case, but the Epstein cases are happening every day to especially girls of color, girls who are in poverty, who are being lured and used as sex object, as if they're not a human being. And this is happening all around us, and we need a whole societal change that actually condemns it, makes it not just illegal, but morally we have, something we won't tolerate.
Krista, anything to add about the buyers?
Sure, I'll just add a quick thing, but just as being part of these operations where we arrest the buyers, they're all ages, they're all races, ethnicities. They come from all walks of life. They could be rich, they could be poor, they could be illegal, they could be legal. It's all over the gamut. Everybody's buying it. It's you get some of the same guys a couple different times, but there's not a specific, population that's doing it. It's everybody.
Oh, how do we do that though? I mean, let me just ask you this. If there's one policy change that could make the biggest difference tomorrow, if it was passed, what would that be? Any of you weigh in?
Well, I think it really does go back to Marisa's. The study was clear that the single biggest deterrent is whether they really thought that there was going to be an actual criminal consequence. And while we want to have a society where people do the right thing because it is the right thing, and it starts with how we raise our boys, we spend a lot of time telling girls what not to do and how to protect themselves and how to make sure they're in walking with a friend. But we don't do the same by telling boys that exploitation, sexual assault, buying human beings is just simply not acceptable and not something cool to be patted on the back with. And I think mothers and fathers have to really start raising boys with more clarity on those issues. But while we wait for that societal transformation, we need to have it very clear under the law. I mean, until January, our laws in California made it that you can buy a teenager for sex and get a citation and a misdemeanor. That was the law. It just changed where it's now a felony to buy a minor, but it really should be a felony to buy a minor or an adult for sex, because it is really what's lining the traffickers' pockets. Like was said, if this is the second most profitable criminal industry in the world, in the United States, and right here in San Diego and around California. How are you going to stop it? It's right after drugs and before the selling of illegal firearms. Too much profit to really stop it without making it where there's an actual consequence for the buyers lining the pockets of the traffickers.
And then there's states that are trying to soften the penalty for it, while we are trying to find ways to toughen them. So I can see where the mixed messages might be coming from, even for young boys and men that are not having these conversations, men and women that are not having these conversations with their sons. I don't know, it's kind of heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yes, it is. If you spend some time with a victim of human trafficking, there's a look that you ask for signs. There's a look that you start detecting, and it's like a look as if the soul has been removed and you become more of an object. One of the things I train on is that one of the things that victims of human trafficking don't know is time and date. Their life becomes a blur of events. So if you ask them actually, like, what day is it today? What time is it? They don't have that structure. They don't know. And that's even for parents, they'll see that their kid, because they're missing the structure of life, of having school, because they're missing school, they're missing their sports, you start to see that they start to lose really the ability to tell you the time and day. They become part of this whole, when am I getting a call? What's happening? Where do I meet? How do I hide this event from my parents? It becomes a series of lies and deception. And so they become very confused about even the simplest things like, what day is it?
They're aloof
Yeah.
about reality.
Yes.
Wow. Miss Krista, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think she said it pretty well. Honestly, I can't think of anything else to add.
What are you experiencing? I mean, just freely talk about some of the things that you're experiencing out in the field when you are either investigating these things or apprehending.
I would say that, are you talking about for the buyers, the demand?
Yeah.
I would say because,
or even your interaction with the victims.
okay. I would say things that we're noticing, especially with this large scale operation we just did in January, is that a lot of them, there's not a huge consequence as of right now for the buyers. They get their citation and they're on their way. A lot of times they can hide it from their wives. They can hide it from their children. They can take care of it, under the radar because it's a citation. Occasionally we are able to book them into jail. We have to run it by the jail first because usually on these operations, we're arresting in large numbers. But even that, it's a book and release. So they're in a couple hours and then they're released. So again, it's easy to hide. It's easy for them to keep it from their families. And a lot of times, if they've only done it one time, their consequence on the other end is not, maybe it's a class, a diversion program, maybe it's pled down to something. So I would say because of the lack of consequence, they're still willing to risk it to buy it, if that makes sense. They're still, the reward at this point is greater than the risk of them getting in trouble. I would say on the victim side of it right now, one of the things we've always struggled with and still struggled with is getting these victims to know their victims. A lot of times when you're interviewing them, they're very aloof. They laugh. They seem like they're proof of things we really struggle with. But it all goes back to just treating them like they're humans, letting them know that we're there for them. I personally provide like my cell phone number and I call or text me. We have cards that look like manicurist cards so that they're not getting like our police business cards so they can hide it from their trafficker. But we kind of try to let things be on their terms because the first time you meet with one of them, they're not going to talk to you. They're not going to disclose stuff. So all we can do is keep trying, reminding them you're not in trouble. We don't judge. You're not in trouble. We don't judge. We're here for you. And when you're ready, we'll still be here. But I think that's one of the things we struggle with most is getting these victims to realize they're victims.
Thank you for sharing. We're going to go ahead and open up the Q&A because we have some questions and our audience wants to know. Let me see. Who has the first question? Does any of the arrests include law enforcement as traffickers? Does any of the arrests include law enforcement as... Oh, so has law enforcement ever been caught trafficking?
We we are lucky and there have been cases around the nation. We've been fortunate in San Diego in terms of the level of corruption and things like that. We have done a case recently where a recently retired police officer had opened a business using his experience on how to evade that involved illicit massage parlors that were really a cover for victims and prostitution, and we did prosecute that case. So there isn't really a profession. I mean, there've been doctors arrested, there's been priests and people, faith people that have been arrested. Every field has a bad apples. That's the reality, and it's our job to not put blinders on and to always be willing to stand up and apply the law evenly to everyone, because that's the only way you build trust in the community.
Absolutely. I hear more and more sextortion cases with teens on Snapchat and Twitch. Can we discuss what that means?
Well, sextortion is a huge thing right now, and it's, believe it or not, it's not just for sexual exploitation, it's now also as a money maker. So the way it usually starts is a relationship. As you know, on all of these platforms, you're able to use an image as if you're a similarly aged child. And so these predators use an image like they're a 14-year-old boy talking to a girl that's similarly aged. They will end up with some naked picture by sharing pictures and showing interest. They will use that picture and will either ask for more sexual favors to meet up and do things, and then reveal that they're actually a 40-year-old pervert, or they will use it to actually ask them to go get their parents' credit card, and to charge and to kind of exploit them financially. So it's now becoming more like both a scam, a money fraud, and a sex exploitation. Again, before these lawsuits, there's really no sufficient algorithms that could catch these conversations, which we know that these platforms have the ability to do to protect children.
Wonderful. Let's talk about recidivism. Once someone has come out of the system and gotten help, how often do they return back to that life? Any of you can answer.
You have to unmute, Marisa.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to answer that. Recidivism sometimes is because the pimp that they're in love with gets out of jail. They go back to him because they're in love. That's one. Two, the other part of recidivism is that unless you do the math with them, they think they're making money so they can do whatever. So money is also the issue of immediate gratification of money for whatever they want. When you do the math with the victim, and we have done it, and somebody taught me to do it, and I hope you can figure it out so you can also put it out there. You tell the victim, okay, so how much do you make a week? 3,000. Okay, so how much, 4 weeks is 12,000. And if you've been in it a year, it's 144,000. How much money do you have of that? Nothing. And then who has the money? He does. Okay. Do you have a bank account? Can you do anything with that money? So I let them know, don't answer me tonight. Let's talk about it tomorrow. And then they come back and say, I've been exploited. And I said, yes, you have. Again, they think they can make a fortune out of it and become millionaires, and it's not true. And the traumatization of these victims because of what they do and how the buyers treat them is a horrific thing. So hear me, unless you have severe mental health issues, you don't want to be set on fire, or you don't want to be thrown out of the window of a hotel and be all cut up. Set up on fire or stabbed and then put a cushion on top of you so they don't see you, or they think they don't see you, you will last there dead for a while. Thank God she was alive. So again, the torture that is, and they endure to think that they're going to make this money is a delusion. But love is the coercion. So, but he loves me. He says he's sorry. That is not the real thing. So making them understand that if they do go back, what we do is that we say, the door's open. You want to come back? We're here for you. The only thing we can do when somebody decides to go back to the pimp or anywhere else is saying, the door is open. If you need us, we're here. You don't vet them. You don't tell them you can't come back. I don't like you. That's not the way to deal with this type of issue. And that's all I can say about that. But it's very important that you understand that money and love are the two things that bring them back into the life. Thank you.
You want to add to that, Summer?
Well, I think it's true. It's the love, but also I think one of the things that I sense is the shame. Shame is one of the toughest chains to break. So when you feel that shame, because it usually in all my cases starts with somebody convincing them that it's just this one time. We need to pay these bills. I love you, like Marisa said, one time. And once they do it that one time, they become hostage to their own shame, and they start to separate themselves from their family and friends because they don't see themselves as belonging anymore. They are now a cheap object. It's their own perception of themselves that keeps them also away from returning, and they continue to recidivate because they feel, and the traffickers, we have them on tape, they tell them, no one is gonna love you. Who's gonna accept you the way you are? And so society affirms that because their family starts to separate from them. It's just like with addiction and other things. It doesn't, sometimes it's not just this one time to break the cycle. It needs repetition, reaffirming that we're going to be here for you, that you're going to be accepted in society. And that's why I think I started with an ask that society see these victims for what they are, not just what they see on the outside, but all the pain on the inside.
You know, it was interesting when the judgment came out about social media and how it was designed for addiction, just like many of the drugs and pushers design it for addiction. These drugs are being put out, or even today's THC, gummies, edibles, it's designed really for addiction. And those buyers and the pimps are using it to get these young people and vulnerable individuals addicted. So that's why I wanted to talk earlier about the smell, because for parents that do not do drugs, that do not vape, that do not do any of those things, identifying that in their young person might be a little difficult. One, because you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and two, they're unfamiliar. So go back with me again about the smell or vaping, any early use drug issues, and how parents can identify, or a teacher, if you're a teacher at a community center or something, what is that smell like? What does it look like when a young person has been using? Are their eyes dilated? How are they acting? Help us understand. I know what it is, but explain to those that may be unfamiliar with the use what they're actually looking out for, visually, using all of our senses, what it looks like, what it smells like, how they're acting. Help us.
I don't know if the detective wants to start, and then I can add a few things.
Sure. I would say for vaping, the biggest thing is that because you're not going to know lot of behavioral changes, but the smell, this is one of the things that draws kids to it, is that they've got every flavor that you can possibly think of. Fruity, I mean, any flavor you can think of. So I would say the smell is huge, because if they're vaping, if they're in their room vaping, you're going to smell that fruity flavor or that minty, whatever flavor they've I mean, there's hundreds of flavors. So I would say that's a huge sign, but you're not going to notice a lot of behavioral changes with the vaping. I have heard from, I have a stepdaughter who's 16, and she talks about kids vaping in class, and they'll put their head down their desk, and they'll, slide the vape under the desk, and it just goes undetected by the teachers because it's quick and their behavior doesn't change. But again, you would smell it. And then I would say for the weed, the weed is where you're going to see the changes in behavior. Maybe they're a little bit more sloppy. Maybe their speech is slurred. The pupils might constrict a little bit, but you're not going to notice, crazy amount. But I would say behaviorally, that's where you would notice the weed, and then the smell as well. I mean, weed, it smells like a skunk. If anyone's had a skunk spray near them, or that's what you're going to smell.
Marisa?
That fentanyl smells like popcorn. That's one. The only marijuana that they're using, it smells like a skunk. And actually it's called skunk, that marijuana. There are others, but the one that is the most common use is that one. So you may think you have a skunk in your backyard, and you actually have a kid smoking marijuana. So that's another one that it's really incredibly. Now, when you find tinfoil paper that is burned in the room of the kid, they may be smoking crystal meth. But if it smells like popcorn, it could be fentanyl. So that's one of the, we went to a training with the DEA that let me know about that one, okay? The fruity smell, yes, but there are other things like the one that I'm telling you, the gas that they're using, sniffing. You're going to, if they're doing it constantly, the outbreak of that in the brain is just as if you were having a psychotic break. You will be all over the place. You'll be delusional. You will be paranoid. And then that kid needs to be going to the hospital right away, and then someplace to help her with that. But the brain damage of that one is even worse than anything else that I have heard. So I'm very concerned about it, because you can buy the gas everywhere. It's the one you use in balloons. It's the one that makes you speak like Donald Duck. But when you use it all the time, it's the worst thing that can happen to a kid. And they're using it because guess what? It doesn't show in the blood. It doesn't show in any drug test. And you have the little cans that look like, so people out there start looking for what I'm telling you. The tinfoil is really important. They may be hiding other paraphernalia, but if you see tinfoil burned in the trash can, watch out. That means crystal meth, cocaine, or other things that you may be burning. So again, acting weird, not sleeping. That's number one for crystal meth. They stay up all night, and then they're losing weight, and they like she said, your pupils are dilated, and you tweak. It's called I'm tweaking. So you tweak because you start getting all these ideas of doing all kinds of little things. So those are the things that parents need to look in. But the signs, the physical signs, is the three that I told you. And being a parent, I've had 4 kids. I was always on the lookout. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Summer, please share how the DA's office and law enforcement is intentionally working with educators where there are higher reports of youth being lured. What mandatory training, other than the annual mandatory training that educators go through, is happening in San Diego? Are there collaborations, intentional partnerships happening? Talk us through that, especially for the areas that have the highest numbers.
Yeah, so great question. I think education is the key. And because we've seen one of the most harmful substances that we saw a reduction in was through education, and it was the tobacco. So that reduced tobacco use by 50%, and it all came from forcing the tobacco companies to pay for prevention education. So we helped pass a law in California that required education about human trafficking in the schools, but different schools take it more or less seriously. Some schools want to believe it's not happening in their area, but clearly a seminal study that we did in San Diego showed that 90% of the high schools had active cases of human trafficking, and that recruitment is happening at the high schools. And yes, there are high schools that have more recruitment, and we're also seeing younger victims. This year, we recently had a 12-year-old that was recovered. A few 13-year-olds. We're seeing the age shift to younger as social media is having more and more access. So we're really wanting it to go to middle schools. It just depends on your school. If you can get a champion, then the implementation isn't just lip service, like you're just going to have one class about human trafficking, because kids don't learn that way. They learn along the way, where it's part of the daily grind of their history class, their health class, their PE class, their social and science classes. I know Marisa does education too in the schools. We have a play that's very interactive that shows kids how it really looks like, how recruitment looks like. But in my book, I would love to see a more organic, consistent implementation of this prevention education in our schools. And one thing that you're focusing on, our valiant moderator, is this drug use. And you're spot on, because a lot of studies show that you really need to address the whole package, meaning you don't just address drug education. All of a sudden, you're doing a lot of fentanyl education, but up pops nitrous oxide, and you haven't thought about that. Or you're just teaching about sexual assault and child abuse. It's really that holistic resilience building, healthy living, making good choices. It's kind of the whole package of training our kids that should be baked into parenting and schools, because they all go together.
They do. I appreciate that. Before we close out, or as we close out, I would like for each of you to give one to-do for everyone that's listening, that's paying attention. What do you want community members to do when they suspect something? Walk us through that. Give us some direction. Leave us with something to look out for, or something to do.
Well, I'll just say that one misunderstanding in community, and this I see in human trafficking, but I also see it in hate crimes and other things, where a community feels that they have to be certain that a crime is occurring in order to report. And they almost feel like they could be in trouble if they report and it turns out to be innocent. This happened in LA recently, where there was a lot of suspicion. They saw a lot of foot traffic to homes or Airbnbs, where foot traffic was coming in and out. And people were afraid to report, because what if, it's a very social resident there? So I would say my number one tip is, if you feel something is wrong, so long as you're reporting it accurately, you're not like, you don't have a vendetta against your neighbors, so you're trying to make up stuff, but you're actually reporting what you see accurately. you're never going to be in trouble. And you could actually be, and I've had so many cases where it was that one report that essentially saved a life. Somebody spoke up and we were able to rescue kids that were almost going to starve to death, or sexual abuse situation, or a human trafficking situation.
Appreciate that. Detective?
Yes, just to elaborate on that, because I completely agree with that. People might think that they're unsure, maybe something's happening, I'm not positive, but in any way you can report it. Obviously, if it's an emergency, 911, but we also have, through the city of San Diego, we have something called Crime Stoppers, and we get tips from them all the time. I think my daughter this, I think my niece this, and it doesn't even have to be that they're a victim. Maybe you suspect your son is up to some shenanigans. Maybe he's starting to dabble into the trafficking life because it's easy with his girlfriend or something like that. But anything that you suspect, you can just Google it, but through San Diego PD, Crime Stoppers is one of the ways. We investigate every tip that comes to our office. And sometimes they lead places and sometimes they take more digging, or sometimes we can't prove anything, so we close them out. But yeah, don't be afraid to report.
Thank you.
I would like to reiterate for a minute too, that in reporting, some people are afraid because they're undocumented. We take care of that. We are international. We do both domestic and international victims, and the parents should not be afraid. So that's one thing that you can tell people, is that our organization does deal with both documented and undocumented people, meaning US citizens and other. They have to qualify for human trafficking. I just wanted to let the community know that we are there for that too, okay? And that we want to help everyone.
Well, I think she ended that well. I want to thank you ladies for being here. I appreciate the opportunity to moderate this conversation. And Ms. Charmaine Soror, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you, Moderator McKenzie. I'm going to turn it over to our President Cohen for final comments.
Thank you, Soror Mosley. Thank you, everyone, for joining this evening's discussion. I want to extend a special thank you to our guest panelist and moderator, Soror Sabrina Bell, President of the North County Chapter, Psi Tau Zeta, NPHC President Donna Dudley, the Brothers of Phi Beta Sigma, and the Sisters of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority. Awareness is the first step, but action is what creates change. Today, we are reminded that sex trafficking is not something to overlook or assume happens somewhere else. It's happening in our own neighborhoods, schools, and communities. Each of us has the power to make a difference by staying informed, speaking up, supporting survivors, and educating others. Let's commit today to being vigilant, compassionate, and proactive in protecting the vulnerable. Together, we can stop exploitation and restore hope. Call to action ideas, learn the signs of sex trafficking, and share them with others. Report suspicious activity to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, 1-888-373-7888. Educate youth about online safety and exploitation risk. Support organizations that help trafficking survivors. And advocate for policies that protect victims and hold traffickers accountable. Back to you, Soror Mosley. Thank you.
Thank you, President Cohen. This was an awesome discussion. It was well needed, so I thank everyone for attending this evening. It's a lot to take away from it. I think that, we can all do better if we stay informed, also notice the signs, and like President Cohen mentioned, report that suspicious activity. I do have, before we end, because I'm so tech challenged. Hold on one second. Well, it's not supposed to look like this, but anyway, y'all get the point. So with that said, have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, panelists, for joining us. And take care and stay safe.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Good night.